Hello and welcome back to another live Paper Pioneer video in the Old Emo Dave channel. My name is John, this is my partner Jay, and today we're going to see two fairly interesting decks in the current meta. Jay, what decks are they?
Yeah, so we have Convoke and Greasefang, two decks that it is Convoke, right?
Yeah, it's the red-white Convoke deck, which kind of exploded into popularity with the release of certain Convoke cards in the meta.
Yep, Knight Errant of Eos got released. Convoke card that made it a deck. It sort of fizzled out a bit now. Not as many people play it as before. I think a lot of people have moved on to Amalia. Sort of same with Greasefang. Huge deck. Not that many people play it nowadays.
Yeah, and it makes you really contemplate. You know how in Modern people talk about like how those decks are an investment, how any of those decks could win any given tournament any given day. Pioneer is it's slightly more volatile, I think, where it's a lot more cyclical in that aspect, where Greasefang was in that time the top deck. It won out of nowhere, no one had a response to it, and now everyone's learned to play against Greasefang.
Yeah, I agree. But these cycles always come back, and Greasefang, even if it's not winning tournaments, it's still a very competitive deck. And if you manage to catch a few people out with it, maybe there's a tournament where there's not much Phoenix, not much Greasefang, people aren't expecting that. Don't bring enough Graveyard hate or Greasefang hate. You could very easily run them over. So I still think the saying of, if you build a competitive deck in Pioneer, it will probably stay competitive for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could always like mash Greasefang in your best of one, because no one's going to have a sideboard plan for that. So, and then on the other half, we have sort of white-red Convoke. It's newer in sort of the chopping block of the meta. It's a very explosive deck where certain hands just make it impossible to come back from. And it has had a couple of upgrades in one of the newer Eldraine sets. There's a 3-mana card that comes down and provides a Bushwhack effect, which gives all your creatures +1/+0 and haste for the turn.
Yes, and there is also the 1-mana 1/2 from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, where you can tap 3 untapped artifacts and/or creatures, and you get to put a counter on it and scry 1. And it's sort of just another way to eke out card advantage, eke out an advantage, making your creatures bigger as the game goes a little bit longer, which is what the deck really needs.
Yeah, and I think, but then again, our Convoke player has just mulliganed twice now. And another thing to consider with a red-white Convoke deck is they're very reliant on that opening hand being aggressive. I think Greasefang has the ability to kind of search for its pieces by turn 3.
Yeah, agreed. The problem with Convoke really is there are the 8 Convoke creatures with the elephant and the knight, and if you don't have any of them in your starting hand is instantly a lot worse, because it is possible that you just draw into a bunch of lands, a bunch of 1/1s, and you've amassed a board of like 5 1/1s. It doesn't really do that much.
Yeah, and in the face of what could potentially be a giant boat smacking you and pooping angels out of its butt, you gotta really consider sort of where really which combo actually has the biggest board benefit. And I think Greasefang again has another edge in that.
Agreed. The angels having flying as well, that's evasion that you don't really get in Convoke, apart from a couple of Thopters if you choose to play them.
But we do see 2 turn 1 plays coming in quick, and Sacred Foundry coming down, 2 damage taken by the Convoke player.
Yeah, and so we saw a Voldaren Epicure to get the blood token. Ooh. So here we see a Witherbloom command, and they can choose 2 modes, and I believe they can destroy the blood token, right?
They can destroy the blood token.
Okay. So they're destroying the blood token and then they're milling 3 and getting land back. I think that's quite good because honestly, you lose this game with Greasefang if Convoke gets to be fast. And if they had a Gleeful Demolition was just able to go off this turn, it would be very difficult for Greasefang to come back. I think that's a very heads-up play from Dave. Sorry, we've been using names now. Dave, the Greasefang player.
Yeah, and it really doesn't look good for Scott here, especially when you see there is a Parhelion in the yard for the Greasefang deck, visibly shown on the top there.
Yeah, if Dave has a Greasefang in hand, let's just go to game 2. The game's over at that point. They're gonna resolute reinforcements, maybe be able to play at night, but they can't stop it. And yeah, there we go. There's a combo, and look, immediately scooped.
Yeah, there really wasn't much. It didn't help. There's a few things that happened. Greasefang went first, was able to deal with the Convoke combo piece before it was able to combo off, to getting into sort of its bigger board state. It's very well played. The Witherbloom command could not have come at a better time.
Yeah, I think Witherbloom command was really good there, and you know the heads up play. I believe Dave has played Convoke before, so knows about the path to victory, as you would say.
Thanks again this far in the video, and whilst the guys are sideboarding for Game 2, this is a great time for us to tell you about our sponsor, Firestorm Games. We play there every Friday, Pioneer, but we also play Modern and Standard throughout the week, and we've got an RCQ coming up on the 9th of March. We'd love to see you there for that. There's links in the description, not only to pick up some sealed product, now Karloff Manor's coming out, but to also pick up your tickets for £20 up until March the 1st. We'd love to see you for some games you might even get on camera and on later videos. But for now, let me take you straight back to the action.
Yeah. Another thing about red-white Convoke sometimes is sometimes you turn off the combat step in order to sort of get that Convoke creature down. So sometimes you delay yourself a turn for a potential advantage. But if Dave, for example, does have Sweepers sideboarded in, that could just be enough time to get rid of all the weenies in the meantime.
I agree with what you're saying there. I think that the turn off is important for Convoke because otherwise they don't have the opportunity to build that board. Oh, and here we see a Clarion Spirit, not something you see every day.
No, but it's quite telling. There's no Kadoltha Rebirth again in hand to take advantage of that artifact. And a greedy 1-land keep by the Greasefang player. This could very much turn. So Clarion is also very good for generating bodies in order to feed into Convoke costs. Oh, well, we do see Kadoltha Rebirth. That must have been top deck.
You keep saying Kadoltha Rebirth. It's Gleeful Demolition.
I mean, they're literally the same card.
No, because Gleeful Demolition targets, doesn't it?
I believe they both target. I believe they're literally the same card that makes
No.
The
Kadoltha Rebirth sacrifices an artifact, which means you can't respond.
Okay, so strictly better.
So strictly better.
Okay. All right, but irrelevant right now, as the 1-land keep was just bad enough that the Greasefang player had to concede there. A bit of a non-game.
Yeah, a bit frustrating there from Dave. He is known in our FNM to sometimes keep some very questionable hands. I mean, you know, a 1-land keep is okay if you're playing Phoenix and you've got 3 cantrips in your hand, but not if you're playing Greasefang and you literally have no spells in your hand you can cast, and only 2 of your colors.
Yeah, and in some respects, a fairly risky keep by Scott as well, because if his hand wasn't fast enough to deal with Greasefang, there was a very good chance that if Dave had that combo, he would have been able to deal with the board, and it would have just been exactly as game 1.
Yeah, agreed. But just going down to 5, it just feels so bad, and it feels so difficult to win, especially with Convoke, because they need to get so many creatures onto the board. You know, they need as many cards as they can get to be able to chain these Convoke creatures.
Yeah, and I think the only relevant card advantage is the Knight Errant of Eos.
Yeah, I believe that is true. Oh wait, sorry.
So now we're in the game.
We've got Thraben Inspectors. Yes.
Oh yes, that's the other one drop option.
Yeah, I believe they play 4 Thraben
I believe.
Inspectors. I'm very curious to see. I believe that it's called Novice Inspector, the new card in the upcoming set MKM. I'm interested to see how many inspectors they actually play.
It kind of, I mean, we spoke about this before in a different video, Jay, about having a lot of elves or mana dorks in a deck versus how useful is that when the only sort of combo card is at max of you play 4 of, which would be the, I keep calling it Filth Rebirth, Lethal Demolition.
I appreciate that. However, the difference between Thraben Inspector and an elf is in the late game, Thraben Inspector is a 3-mana 1/2 that draws you a card. It's still good. It replaces itself. 3 mana is really not that steep to get a creature down and replace itself, and it's exactly what Convoke needs to be able to get back into the game. So I think the Inspector is good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you would play 8, maybe something like 5 or 6, but we'll have to see.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. It may even replace. You may even replace the turn 1 vampire entirely.
True. I think being a 1/2 is quite a significant upgrade, and then the 1 damage from the vampire, it does matter a little bit, but not as much as straight up drawing a card off a clue rather than rummaging with the blood.
Rummaging. So we see Greasefang open up with Thoughtseize, and they went turn 2 no play. This might be revealing a Grizzly Salvage end of turn play.
Interesting to see the Thoughtseize took Cathar Commando. Pretty good against Greasefang. Pay 1, sack it to destroy an artifact, and it's got flash, so you can flash it in to do that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And we do see Carrion's ability to generate a token when you cast.
Yeah, so here we see the Venerated Loxodon coming down, for practically free with all of the Convoke. And all of these creatures are going to get a +1/+1 on them, which is going to be how much damage? 8.
So far, 4, 6, 9 damage with the Carrion.
Oh yes.
And
9 damage.
Which would make it
13 damage. So they've got almost lethal on board. I'm not sure about the silence there coming out of the main board, coming out of the sideboard. Oh, and it looks like they Grizzly salvaged away Temporary Lockdown. Again, another fantastic answer to Convoke.
Yeah, and Grizzly Salvage is not a land, Dave. Put it back. Put it in the graveyard. That's it. Good. Thanks, Scott. So one thing to consider with silence, I'm guessing the idea is beginning of turn, shut them down from casting a spell and wipe a turn, but then I don't think it's relevant enough. I think creature interaction is just a bit more important against red-white.
Yeah, I agree, and it's also the choice between playing that or advancing your game plan. Like we can see, if they had the silence in hand, would they really have chosen to silence last turn, not knowing that the opponent was about to go off instead of Grizzly salvaging? Probably not.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, I think silence is probably better against other kinds of combo decks, and I don't even think it's that great.
No, it's probably just cheeky and something in the Abzan colors that's an option. Maybe there's something in F&M that kind of warranted the silence, and because it's taken up that sideboard slot, it's an option.
Yeah, all right. So they're just going to pass the turn. Maybe they've got some removal in hand. That they're not dead on board yet. Oh, there is the Gleeful Demolition in hand. I don't think it's worth playing that out yet, right?
No, it's a strange situation where that is not at all relevant in this position. Like, especially in the face of, we've seen the temporary lockdown. Scott has seen the temporary lockdown. It might not be worth committing more. I
agree.
The board.
In case you're afraid of a sweeper, I mean, if they attack with all here and Dave has nothing, Dave goes down to 3, and your board is gonna be lethal unless he has a sweeper. And then if he does sweep it, you get to refill your board with enough creatures that even if he gets blockers out, he probably will lose anyway.
Mm. And Scott is just doing the calculations. We've calculated 13 at the moment. Dave's probably also calculated that. But it looks like Dave might have some responses.
Oh, no. They just put the life down. So they might have another Grizzly Salvage or something at the end of turn to advance the game plan. Oh, sorry. They go down to 2 with the Voldaren and Epicure.
Yeah. So, speaking of Voldaren and Epicure probably being replaced, this is a positive situation. But the other side of Convoke is the board is very wide. So even having the combo piece both, I don't think it's going to be good
exactly.
enough
If they play Greasefang, they've lost anyway. They can't block this many creatures, which is why the sweepers are so important, and why I said Greasefang would struggle if they get behind at any point.
It is a bit unfortunate. Because this is a weakness of Greasefang that we are witnessing, where despite the amount of ways to try to make that combo consistent, sometimes you just don't draw
Well,
it.
even if they did draw it, I'm not even sure it would have helped them that much. I think there were enough creatures and potential for creatures on the Convoke side that they would have just ran them over. I think the thing is, people act like Greasefang is an instant win, but it isn't. Parhelion does not deal that much damage. It creates, a couple of angels. If you can just go faster or go wider, you will beat Greasefang.
Yeah, and we see there a concession from Dave, and Scott winning that quite handily. And yeah, exactly like you said, Jay, it's not an instant win combo, so maybe it might not have been as relevant. But there was that one turn where Scott tapped down all his creatures to play the elephant. That turn would have been very different with a Parhelion on the board. Those Ornithopters might have been kept up as blockers.
Yeah, if let's say after the turn they played the Smiter, not the Smiter, the Venerated Loxodon, Dave was able to get a Parhelion from the graveyard with Greasefang. Then I believe Scott would have had a turn to Gleeful Demolition, maybe drop another threat, and if Dave commits too much attacking, they've got lethal on the crack back, especially if they draw into any sort of Bushwhack effect, the Immordained Recruiter, especially if they draw into any of those. And there you can see a Bushwhacker is revealed, so definitely in their deck. So I think it's very risky, and Convoke is in the good position where they've got a load of top decks that can win them the game. Greasefang doesn't.
Yeah. No. And I think Greasefang is coming from an older Pioneer format where it was a lot more bomby. So single big plays were a lot more relevant. Convoke plays more into a too fast to handle kind of play style, which again you have to be prepared for it, and it didn't seem Dave was.
I agree. Convoke has, was birthed out of a format where 1-for-1 removal was king, and no one really played any sweepers, which is why Convoke came in, and it was so good when it did.
I think it also came in at a time when blue-white control was kind of fading out of popularity in the Pioneer format as well.
Yeah, agreed. And blue-white control is probably one of the decks that plays the most sweepers, at least in the sideboard.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about these two decks enough, Jay. What are your final thoughts on this game?
Don't keep one-land hands.
Yeah, Dave. Man, every time, man. Right. I've been John. This has been my partner, Jay. Thank you for watching this video. Like and subscribe. Thank you very much.